And I'm now going to invite, and we're nearly home there, everybody. I'm going to invite our co-hosts, Theo Farrell, Chris Ryan, with a very special role to play as will be revealed very shortly. And I'd again like to invite Manuela back to the stage, and we're just going to do a wrap at the end. You may have seen a little bit earlier, there's a poll open on the Slido, the last poll that you'll be invited to engage in. I've got it open here somewhere. It's going to give you the opportunity to share takeaways from this event with us. It's going to hopefully give you the opportunity to share what has inspired you to the point of doing something about it and an action that you might take. We'd like to get your feedback, obviously, as everyone always would in an event like this, of how you rated today, and then something that I'll mention a little bit in a little while, what topics or types of sessions and formats you'd suggest for the next HEDx. But I think the idea here was, well, I'll perhaps stay where I am now. I am where I am. I'm joined in this closing session by 3 different people, and Chris, I'm going to come to you in the middle there first, because what's next for HEDx?
Well, a few things. So I was reflecting on Danny's comments just before, and that conversation of, hang on, shouldn't we have been having this conversation 2 years ago, and what conversation should we have next? I had 4 written down in my list. Danny, that comment about general AI was one that I thought, well, why aren't we having the conversation now? And I was just reading an article in the New York Times saying, hang on, we're not ready for this. Well, let's get ready. So I think that's something that we need to have. There's another thing, people are talking about teaching and the value of education. I've got a really firm view on this. I want my students to value what I value, and I want them to be able to challenge and reimagine what I value. And they're the only 2 things that I want, actually. And if we can bring that conversation back in and bring in that collaborative play with AI, I think we can do that, and it'd be marvellous. The work of the future, we need to talk about that. And I was really taken with the notion of nurses and doctors Paul mentioned right at the start. So actually, is our framework incorrect when we say to students, become a nurse or become a doctor? Our definitions are getting blurry, and we should perhaps embrace that. But most importantly, I would really value if everyone can... now, we had a small cyclone up in Brisbane. It was all good, though. We've tied it up since then. I'd love you to meet our students there and hear directly from our students. Now, we're investing $1 million a year in teaching innovation grants. Jason gave you an example of some of that work. They are being put together with our students. And I was wondering whether maybe, Martin, if I could invite you maybe early November for you and a few of your friends to come back to UQ. We'd love to host you if you're willing to do that.
All those in favour say aye. Thank you very much for that very warm invitation. And look, I'll come to you in a minute, Manuela, but Chris, just reflecting then, and you've done a bit of that already there, but reflecting on all that you've heard in the conversations today and that have taken place here, and thinking about the really tangible impacts that would actually benefit students on the ground in, I don't know, let's forward cast to 12 months' time. Will have been to UQ in the first week of November this year and had conversations like this, but maybe different from this. What are the key topics that we need to discuss at UQ in 6 months' time when we all join you there to really make an impact on students?
I'm going to premise that by one thing, though, before I answer. I had the great fortune that I don't think many other people in the room have had here. I got to sit down next to and have lunch with Tim Rennick. And Tim mentioned one thing to me which I think is a really important message that I hope you don't mind, Tim, me passing to everyone else. The changes that we have to make, they're called incremental, right? And that means we have to celebrate the little things, and we have to be able to see from everybody the little things that we're doing and saying, I can do that. We don't have to reinvent. We have to adopt, and we have to adopt as rapidly as we can. And when you bring enough little things together, you get a quantum change. Now, that means that we absolutely have to embrace AI and bring that in. So in my area, to your question, something that I know we need to do at UQ, and we're not doing enough at UQ. That idea of collaborative play that we just heard now, we're not providing the tools for our academics to play collaboratively. And with that, we engender a sense of mistrust. So that's one thing that we need to do. Now, the last time I sat here and you asked me a question like that, it was in UQ, and I said we need to do more research in feedback around AI. So hopefully when you see me again, I'm going to be able to say that we've got that. But the other thing that we need to do, and I've noticed this in my response, other universities' response, we're putting up all these websites to tell students and academics what to do when it comes to AI. Cool. And it's ignoring the collaborative play. So we are looking to work with our students to flip that on its head and ask our students in a white hat kind of way, right? How do you use AI? And would you mind showing us a quick video of that and sharing that in a constructive way so that our entire community can learn from that and feel more assured that that's appropriate? So they're two things that we're hoping to do.
Well, it's very kind of you to offer to host us next time in UQ and to have already given some thoughts of what that might be about. We'll come to our host for this time after inviting Manuela to say a few words. Now, Manuela, you've played a big role in this conference today, and Adobe has, in that you've been on a fireside chat earlier. I should acknowledge that Adobe was most kind in providing so much assistance in bringing Lev from ASU to Australia for this conference, and we're really grateful for your support in that. It gives me an opportunity, the question was raised earlier of the coolest thing that they've seen with AI. When I first met Lev on a Zoom call for a podcast of 4 or 5 weeks ago, I made the mistake, or maybe it wasn't a mistake, of wearing a Fleetwood Mac t-shirt. And we've bonded around our age group, seems to have a bit of affinity for some of that. When he was recovering from jet lag after your bringing him here earlier this week, he used AI for a two-step process, one of coming up with a Fleetwood Mac album cover that featured me and Lev and his colleague Dave from ASU from some root photographs. But then he took the step of converting it into a picture of the Muppets. And as yet, that hasn't found its way out of his camera in my inbox, but I suspect it might well do that. I don't know if it's the coolest, but it's the way that I think experimentation and playing with AI and forming common bonds for it is so important. It's been so helpful for us to have Adobe's support. You're also the sponsor of the drinks and the networking that we're about to have that I'm stopping us getting to, Manuela. And we thank you and appreciate your support for that. But do you want to say a few words about the artistry and the poetry that may have happened here today?
Oh, Martin, I will start by jumping on something that you were mentioning, Chris, that I think and I'll echo some of the comments that I saw on Slido, if you don't mind. Whenever you're discussing education, it comes to my mind a quote from this prominent Brazilian pedagogue called Paulo Freire. I'm not sure if you guys came across him. But he says that whoever teaches learns in the act of teaching, and whoever learns teaches in the act of learning. And it makes me think that we should definitely have a student voice in these conversations, right? I think you cannot lose sight of that. But the day started today with you, Theo, mentioning the Industrial Revolution and change being a given in our time. So how do we prepare students for the future? How do you prepare them for AI? Well, we prepare them for change. And how do you prepare humans being for change? We want them to be resilient, creative, curious, empathetic, aware of their surroundings, of who they are, owners of their own stories, digital storytellers, right? And I think it is, again, yet again, a chance that we have to look at students in the eyes and to see the world through their eyes. It will definitely, as Susan mentioned to us, go through TikTok. Definitely that's going to be a component of that. But in this moment where we're required to act, and I think we saw the commonality, act, it's a time for action. We also want our students to act more than ever in the world that we live in. And in this time of tectonic plates shifting, Lev, I'll finish, Martin, with, it's not poetry and it's not mine, but as an educator, again, it guides me to think that education is an act of love and thus is an act of courage. So we should be brave. And we did indeed, in my perspective, achieved art. I think we spoke about that at the beginning and how this conversation is a bit like art, a bit like jazz, a bit like dancing. We are all trying to get a joint search. I think we achieved that today. And on behalf of Adobe, I want to thank you everyone for that generosity. And we look forward to keep the conversation going.
Well, thank you for that, Manuela. We thank UQ for hosting us next. We thank you and all of our partners for supporting us so well this time. And as I return to the end of the row there with Theo Farrell, with whom we started today this morning, who's been our most gracious and generous co-host and partnered with us in the event here today at the State Library of Victoria on behalf of La Trobe. Theo, I'm sure you have some thoughts to close with of observations on the day and thanks that you want to make.
Yeah, thanks, Martin. So my hope for today was that it would be an opportunity for us to broaden our horizons and to have lots of interesting conversations. And I think the one thing that this day has certainly delivered are lots of opportunities to reflect, fantastic insights from the panels and the speakers, and real buzz, actually, over coffee and lunch. And one of the things that comes across really clearly is in our tertiary sector, with all of our university and vocational providers, there is one thing that unifies us, and that is that we are driven by a very strong common sense of purpose, which is to create and share knowledge to improve lives and build better societies. So whatever we're talking about, that common sense of purpose is our North Star. And I think time and again we've heard speakers say we have to focus on that. But I'm really struck by the comments, for instance, from Tim, which is notwithstanding that sense of common purpose, that one of the things we're all really animated by is how we can address disadvantage through education. Often we in universities are the barriers to that purpose. And one of our challenges is how we actually provide personalized support to students at scale. And we all have very large numbers of students, and that is just a very difficult thing to do. So therein lies the promise, one of many promises of AI. I'm also struck by I think Paul got us off to a good start with a real call to arms. He really challenged us to have a sense of urgency. I really liked I must confess, I've been guilty of using the expression, AI won't take your job, someone using AI will take your job, and he called nonsense out on that one. And he said, no, AI risks causing mass job displacement. We have to face up to this moral challenge as a sector that has a mission to train people for the future and educate people for the future. And so, as Lev put it, we have to embrace this disruptive moment that we're facing and move at the speed of the market, because the ground below us is just shifting incredibly quickly. And this is the reality that our students are living now and our graduates will live throughout their lives. And so this really, I think, is the insight that I think Susan brought to us, which is being AI first. What's that mean? It means a commitment to actually change at the pace that's required and to grow with our students. That actually has to be our moral purpose. And so it is very much a human-centered approach. So I think I was really struck by a note that was handed to me by Kelly, which is, some of our students are building their own agents already. Well, soon that will be most of our students are building their own agents. So that's the reality that we're facing. I just in closing want to say a big, huge thank you to Marcia Devlin and Professor Marcia Devlin and Professor Kelly Matthews. You guys injected a really interactive element into today, and I really thought that was just superb. And also, I just want to say thank you to Tori Dillon and the events team at La Trobe, who worked with the HEDx team, which has been supporting us today. But most of all, Martin, thank you for the opportunity to partner with you. I think we've had a great day of conversations and sharing of insights. And I think the important thing here is that we're on a collaborative journey together to serve our communities and our students to the best of our abilities by leveraging the opportunities AI affords us. So thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Theo. And it only remains for me to add a few more words of thanks of my own to all of the speakers here in this session and every session that we've had today, for everyone to join us. I'd like to also thank Marcia and Kelly for being such fantastic supporters of this event and making a great contribution. To my HEDx team of James Lees, who's here, Stephanie Bido, who's out there somewhere, poor Janet Stone, who's in the Gold Coast trying to deal with all of the live stream feedback, and my apologies to anyone inconvenienced by that. And also Kate Gilpin, who has helped us, but since had to leave. Thank you to all of our members. Thank you to our partners. Thank you to all of the the venue team, the crew at the back. I'm sure you've had a tough day too in some ways, but you had a great day looking after us so well. Thank you. And the catering and the front of house team from the State Library of Victoria. I really am the only thing now standing between you and a drink and a canapé. I'm going to stand here no longer. Thank you very much.